All right, now we're on to part E. So we noticed in D that we divided by the largest power of the variable, right? So x to the 4. And we were able to create some ratios that a majority of them went to 0, and we were able to find our limit a little bit easier. In E, we notice perhaps something similar. So what happens is if I plug in 2, I get 2 times 2, which is 4. And if I plug in 2 into the bottom, I get 2 squared is 4 minus 4 would be 0, right? Now, this is very similar to D as our final output, right? We noticed that I had 4 over 0, just like up here we had kind of like a 1 over 0. And this is going to push us to infinity, but the real question was, is it going to be positive infinity or is it going to be negative infinity? Now, the even bigger issue here is that this is going to be from two sides, right? This is a two-sided limit. Whereas going to infinity, we didn't really have to consider both sides, right? Because infinity is kind of going to infinity, right? Whether it's infinity from the left or infinity from the right, it's still a really big positive number. That wouldn't change the outcome of the denominators, right? But here, as I go towards 2, 2 from the left or 2 from the right might make my denominator turn to either 0 from the left side or 0 from the right side, right? I might have like a really small negative number or a really small positive number conceptually in the denominator. So I'm going to need to do a little bit of analysis on that, right? Figure out from the left and from the right, are those two going to be the same? So let's start from the left. Let's take the limit as x goes to 2 from the left side. Now, if I plugged a number conceptually, right? Remember, we're not actually doing this by hand, but if I conceptually plugged in a number a little bit less than 2, maybe like 1.9999999 repeated, right? The numerator would be just a little bit less than 4, right? Just a little bit less, but basically it's going to 4, but it's 4 slightly from the left, right? And in the denominator, if you plug in something a little bit less than 2 and you square it, you get a number that's a little bit less than 4, correct? So 2 squared would be 4. Something just slightly less than 2 squared would be just a number slightly less than 4. So this is kind of like 4 from the left side. And then you're subtracting 4 from that, right? So what happens when you take something that's just a little bit less than 4 and you subtract 4 from it? Well, you get a number that's just a little bit negative, right? Because 4 from the left is slightly smaller than 4. You're subtracting a bigger number from something that was smaller than that. You're going to get a negative number. And what happens when I take 4 from the left and I divide it by 0 from the left? 4 over 0, of course, goes to infinity. We've talked about how a number over 0 pushes to some infinite value. And then the sign, of course, positive on the top, negative on the bottom. We get negative infinity. Now, the question is, that's as we go 2 from the left, is going to 2 from the right going to produce the same value? Because if so, if this produces a negative infinity as well, then the final answer from both sides would be negative infinity. Well, let's figure it out. So 2x over x squared minus 4. Again, as I go towards 2 from the right side, I would produce 2 times a number slightly bigger than 2, which would be a little bit bigger than 4, right? 4 from the right side. And the bottom, if you take a number that's slightly bit bigger than 2 and you square it, you get a number, of course, slightly bigger than 4. And we're going to subtract 4 from that. Well, if you take a number that's bigger than 4 and you take away 4 from it, you're going to get a number that's slightly bit bigger. So in this case, the denominator would be 0, but from the right side, slightly bit positive. And numerator is positive, denominator is positive. It fits the form a number over 0, which we know pushes to infinity. Therefore, this would go to positive infinity. All in all, that means two-sided limit, so at the limit as x goes to 2 of my 2x over x squared minus 4 would not exist, right? So it would not exist as our two-sided limits are not equal, right? So the limit from the left side of this is not equal to the limit as I go to from the right side of my 2x over x minus 4. Okay, so very important, like we've seen, when we're going to, especially this finite value, right? We're going to 2. you need to make sure that you're checking both sides, right? We're doing a two-sided limit. You need to make sure that both sides are the same, okay? Perfect.